Hello, I'm MPX Toycat, and it's no secret that the Bedrock version of the trial chambers have some issues here or there, such as this one, which ironically enough doesn't have any bedrock below it. However, this is something which actually happens a surprising amount, despite all of the unique measures Bedrock has put in place to prevent this. The Bedrock version of structure generation actually has a lot of fun quirks that the Java version does not, and although that sometimes leads to you spawning below the void, and I will be going through some fun seeds of that, it does also lead to some interesting things you might not have known about structure generation that we can go through today. So weird generation rules, weird seeds, and then what this actually means for Minecraft, let's do it today. And I'll begin by showing you the first trial chambers that I found in a committed survival world, because this is my caveman series where I'm living below Y0. I've streamed the entire thing, and I found it especially fun to come to one of these structures, where I of course got my hands on a bunch of copper, because when you go into one of these in survival, you honestly might not even notice some of the weird quirks of the structure, but there are a ton of them. For example, this right here is an area with nothing in between it. Over there, to the edge of the world, has nothing there, but you'll notice there are multiple block thick walls and almost all of the structure. This is something you'll find basically no matter where you dig in the structure. If you go digging anywhere, you'll have to dig at least 2 blocks worth of tough bricks before you reach the actual end of the world. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 or even more, and this tells us some interesting design implications that they really want to make it harder to mine into this thing in a way that doesn't make sense if you will be able to just go at it with a pickaxe. Is there something else coming, or is this just the first structure they've decided to insulate multiple layers thick using these tough bricks? It's hard to say for certain. It could be specifically just to keep it looking square on the outside. This is something you probably won't notice if you only fly around and look at these structures via spectator mode, where everything that isn't air is just made invisible while you're standing in it. However, if we do a simple command to remove all of the blocks around it, you'll notice something interesting, which is the shape of the inside, i.e. it's got all of these divots and whatnot going in, versus the shape of the outside, which as you can see is much more square in every way. If we repeat this exact same command everywhere else around the structure, you'll notice that it does look like a bunch of giant boxes just kind of sitting in the void. This is a very interesting decision to make, because again, it kind of implies to me like they want it to be this way. They could have designed it so that it doesn't matter what you see on the outside, but it almost looks like you would have to excavate around one of these things specifically to try and find this, a weird way in. Or indeed one of these, which is a hallway which currently just goes off to nothing. These are reported as a bug in the current generation, whereas the squareness of the structure, and indeed the weird way that it has this, is not reported as a bug, making me think there will be some official way to enter potentially, and that is the set of circumstances where I would believe that this right here is an entrance to the structure, as it's the only thing not made of tough bricks, which might be unbreakable in base survival until you've defeated the thing, because otherwise the way that you would get around it is by breaking your way between structures and also just mining your way in by pure chance. If you think about your odds of digging through and specifically finding this, it's very low, but yet this is called the entrance in the game code, and so either this is an entrance to something bigger and new that isn't in the game yet, or this is the only way you'll be able to enter the entire thing, and if you find tough brick, you'll have to dig around until you find it, which would be wild, right? However, something more wild is the fact that Minecraft has really good minimum spacing on this structure. So even if we look around this one as much as we might like, we're not going to find another trial chamber within at least 256 blocks. This is something I've confirmed using Chunkbase, which added support for the trial chambers. Isn't that crazy? This has come to Bedrock, previews literally this week, and we already have a way to search these on Chunkbase, meaning what I can do is I can show you the nearest trial chambers to this one is all the way over there. And if we measure using the Bedrock commands, which say that this one starts at 1264 minus 848, and then go to this second one so that it's our nearest trial chamber, you'll notice the suspicious closeness between the two of them to that 256 block gap that I mentioned before, which is very, very interesting. But yeah, there is a minimum spacing between trial chambers of at least 256 blocks. It will never make the two structures closer together than that, and there is no sign of where they are before you happen to mine into one, which means that finding these will be incredibly rare. People like to say they're so common because, again, they're flying around in spectator, but keep in mind this is a very rare structure that is found very far apart from other ones, which is important to note because you also can't find it via any other means you might be used to. Next, let's talk about something which exists on Bedrock but doesn't exist on Java, which makes finding the trial chambers harder. This is something that is likely to be added to Java at some point, and it's something which is so inconspicuous that even as I'm showing you it head on, you might not know what I'm talking about, because there's something on Bedrock which basically tries to occlude huge structures from the giant brand new caves so that you can't just accidentally find a stronghold or find a trial chambers or anything like that. And it's so well done that most people won't see it until they think about it, because this is what normal cave generation looks like. As you can see, it's very contoured individual blocks, very curvy, very natural looking cave, and on the left is a very flat looking wall. You might have seen these before and just thought, oh yeah, that's weird, but who knows what that's all about. But consider that the exact same thing happens with the floor. This is what normal floor looks like, curvy, goes down and then up again, and this is what the floor in this particular room looks like. Because this is flat and this is exactly like that, this is actually a very good hiding for a trial chamber. Don't believe me? Well, let's dig down a few blocks and let's find out. Oh, did I pick the wrong one? No, there we go. Okay, that was weird. You have to go through about 10 blocks of it, but they specifically hide any structure through at least 10 blocks of deep slate. This is a very weird thing to see, but it means that there is a trial chambers here that you can perfectly spot because of the very, very flat walls around it, whereas if we look on the Java version, this same thing doesn't happen. If you're in a cave and that cave is about to collide with a trial chamber, it just collides with the trial chamber, leaving you with a bunch of exposed tough bricks in that cave, and indeed a very interesting looking cave where you can't go any further because there's bricks stopping you in every single direction. That ability to collide will occur even with the largest caves, even if it's a deep dark cave, even if it's an ancient city, you can still find entire trial chamber rooms just floating around here and existing, and this is a very interesting trial chamber because it goes all the way down to Bedrock. We'll talk about how it handles Bedrock and the difference between the two platforms there, because it's the one big thing that Java gets right. However, something that does change between Bedrock and Java is the distance you need to have between two trial chambers. Notice right here, one big trial chamber. You'll see that it is a particularly big one, but it is still one trial chamber, and then notice how small of a gap we have before the next one, which is just over there. This trial chamber over here with the exact same room, all you have to do from here is walk through this, go through a little bit of cave, go through another cave, and then less than 100 blocks later, you connect to the second trial chamber. Because there is no minimum spacing rule, or at the very least the generation allows for some weirder things, it means that you are more likely to, and indeed it's inevitable that at some point someone will find a seed where multiple trial chambers will collide in the same space, and that is something that might wreak havoc on whatever the idea of trial keys or entrances or chambers is meant to be if you have multiple access points. I think there's a lot of other weird things we can say about Java generation and the way that structures collide, but it is worth saying just for now that it is of course very different. Wait, what even happened here? There's a big amethyst geode here. That makes sense. It's in a weird cave with a mine shaft and with a trial chamber, but then this one is a second one that was going to collide with the first one? Or how does any of this actually happen? It makes no sense to me. Which isn't a bad thing, by the way. I think most people like structure collisions. Maybe not when they result in weird holes in the game, like this one, but people in general like the idea of structures colliding, but maybe that's because it is a novel bug that is hard to find. But for now, all we can say is that both platforms have issues with other structures generating inside of their structures, both in terms of geodes, but also in terms of other biomes blocks. This is a bug that does need to be ironed out and probably will be done over the next few weeks. However, something that is much bigger than that is how these structures handle Bedrock. For now though, one last thing to consider before we jump into seeds is this right here. We are on the Java edition and we have a trial chamber that otherwise would like to go very close to the Bedrock layer and perhaps even break it, and what we have instead is this weird mix of a trial chamber. Oh, it appears to be one of those that actually has the powdered snow in it, which is handy for jumping into, by the way. But as you can see, all of the powdered snow doesn't exist, and instead what we have is a weird mishmash of blocks, some tough bricks here, some powdered snow there. But this is the way that it generates on the Java edition of the game, because there is an order of these structures, and this generally implies what generates first, and then what comes second, and then third. Basically, it's implied by which block should overwrite which, and so if you look at the earlier example of the trial chamber, the mineshaft, and the geode, you could tell the geode generated first, and then was overwritten by the mineshaft, and then you could tell the mineshaft was overwritten by the trial chamber by the fact that its tops was missing, and there were some tough bricks there, meaning that the order there was the geode, then the mineshaft, and then the trial chambers. It actually doesn't matter which order they generate in, because the blocks kind of take precedence that way, and so in the trial chambers for Java, you can see that what happens is the trial chambers generate first, and then the Bedrock is overwriting it, and so you get this weird result instead. This is interesting because on Bedrock they went a different way, because their order of operation seems to go like this. If there is Bedrock bedrock that would intersect with a trowel chamber, they'll just remove that bedrock, which interestingly enough means that right below this trowel chamber are 2 layers of bedrock, but they're perfectly flat, unlike how bedrock usually generates in the rest of the world, meaning that if we dig past this, you'll eventually get to the point where bedrock is generating normally and a very, very weird connection between that, which honestly, I think this is real fun and is why I want to show you some seeds today. Hello, I'm AppyX and welcome back to Seed Sunday, except it's inside of another video. Wow, what a surprise that is. I'm still going to give a small plug to tell you to consider subscribing to the channel. It's a great way to support channels that you like and also see more of their stuff. Seems like a win-win to me. However, this is an interesting seed which came in from Chris. He is always someone I love to follow for seeds. This is Chris999 by the way, but he's very, very good at finding seeds such as this one right here where you spawn in a jungle, very beautiful. But the real goodness is found in this birch forest at roughly these coordinates, because if you dig down from here, I say dig down, but it's over 100 blocks. So really, I mean, go on a big voyage that happens to be in a vertical direction, you'll eventually find a trowel chamber that looks like this, which does not only have strays in it, which is interesting enough by itself, but also has all of this snow, and then also below that snow has all of this bedrock in a perfectly flat formation. What is not to love about this? Well, maybe the fact that, so interestingly enough, after this was found by This Is Chris, Echo found a seed which honestly managed to take this to the next level, because it's a seed that has so many staircases in it that once you go down to the bottom of all of those staircases, you reach a part of the trowel chamber where the floor has gone missing. The trowel chamber has removed the bedrock and replaced it with air, which means you have trowel chambers that you have to walk through yourself. I placed these blocks myself earlier, and you will get one of the easiest trowel keys of your life because spiders will spawn and then vanish into nothingness, which I think is absolutely funny. But yeah, this is something that you can see, and it's extra fun because if I jump down here, you'll see from looking down that actually there's multiple chambers that look like this. And you might recognize it as being from the very beginning of this very same video because it is one of the wildest seeds ever shown that proves that they maybe have some things they need to work on when it comes to structures and how they interact with Bedrock. The order of operations on Bedrock is different to the one on Java, but they both seem to cause major issues. Is this issue bigger or is it more useful? It depends on how you see giant gaping holes in Bedrock. Personally, I really like it. Speaking of things I really like though, here is one of the dozens of seeds I loaded up trying to find an ancient city that could link into a trowel chamber. However, something they seem to have locked down, at least to an end user doing it manually, is the connection between these two structures. This is an ancient city, the biggest structure by actual square footage or square meterage, I guess, that exists in Minecraft, and this is the separation I could find between it and one of the closest trowel chambers. In the same way that trowel chambers try to generate far away from each other, and wait, what? Is there just a random block missing here? But in the same way that trowel chambers try to generate away from each other, they also desperately try to generate far away from the ancient cities, which is interesting and telling, right? These two structures are in a similar category, and I think that's fascinating. But yeah, this is also a great seed for anyone who wants to have a very small trowel chamber. There are just 4 separate aggressive chambers you have to take down, and in between them, you get one of the most useful hallways, which has a chest in it, and also between them, you'll get the bedroom with the barrel, which is always handy, and then also you'll get one of the more interesting types of chandelier rooms, because as you can see, there's powdered snow in this one too, and even a fun little trap involving a dispenser. What is not to love here, besides, I don't know, the challenges and everything else like that, and also the fact that the poison skeleton spawners don't spawn poison skeletons, I tell you, there's nothing not to love here because it's absolutely perfect. And yeah, it's one of the many weird things you can find in this world, including this weird hallway with a floating, like, why does this exist? What is the benefit of that supposed to be? Anyway, yeah, this is a weird trowel seed near an ancient city if you want to take on both in the same survival world. In the preview, because all of these seeds are for Bedrock only, you can experience the exact same terrain between Bedrock and Java, but as best we can tell right now, the trowel chambers and ancient cities and everything else do not sync up between them, which is a missed opportunity. I feel like this would have been a great moment to make sure that trowel chambers are the same between platforms, but they have not taken it. That is a big piece of parity that is missing, which is interesting given their focus on parity recently, but we'll leave that to the side for now, alongside the random deep slate that seems to generate in this structure on both Java and Bedrock, and instead move to our conclusions today. So we've learned a lot in today's video, but to kind of summarize it, let's split things into 3 categories: the unintentional, the intentional, and then what we can learn from seeing both of those 2 categories. First things first, the way that these structures collide with other biomes, lush caves or deep darks, is honestly kind of ugly to look at, but also is clearly unintentional because of the fact that it's listed as a bug on both changelogs. It makes me believe that both systems of the game will just unintentionally, when they make a new structure, collide with biomes, which is a very interesting way that those biomes are clearly hard-coded in, and so that is something that's obviously going to be fixed. I also think it's very obvious they're going to fix the bedrock concern. The way that it is done on Bedrock, where it removes the bedrock, is probably bad, but also the way it's done on Java, where you get a big mess when it goes down that low, is also real bad, and the way they solve this is going to be interesting, because they can either just raise up the structures, or they can commit to a Bedrock-style solution. I don't think the second one is something they're ever going to want to do, and so instead the first solution, where you just have it build down until you hit 2 layers below Bedrock, is probably just about as good as you can hope for, and so that would be a nice compromise if you ask me. But then there is the intentional. What is it that they have actually done that they really do want to do? One of these is making it several blocks thick. There is no way this is an accident. I think that for some reason they have some plan for this structure that deliberately wants it to be really, really thick, so you can't just mine one layer and then another. That means that Tough Brick is either going to get 10 times harder to mine, or there's going to be something about the structure which will compel you not to randomly go through the walls, or maybe it's an insulation thing. Who knows for sure? There's going to be something about this thickness that is intentional. Minecraft doesn't just add random blocks to the world for no reason in general, although, you know, maybe the random block missing in the ceiling that one time proves otherwise. But yeah, this and the extra block on the desert temple and so many other examples proves that they will add some blocks sometimes by accident, but just making it so much thicker and making the caves around it so much harder to deal with is something I doubt they have done by accident. And the other thing that I think we can clearly take away is the fact that the way that structures are generating in relation to each other and in relation to, you know, more trial chambers tells us they do want trial chambers to be at least somewhat special. It shouldn't be a structure where you're like, yeah, I raided trial chamber and it was so cool because it was right next to another one. They are putting a lot of work into making sure they don't go so close together that you raid 2 for 1 or 3 for 1, which makes me think that whatever you get is meant to be so valuable that you're like, oh my god, I did this, I got the trial keys, and then you'll want to come back to your first one again in half an hour when the trial spawners refresh, versus just going to another one. That is how I take it, at least. And so yeah, what can we learn from all of these things? I think the biggest is that trial chambers are very much in a funny stage of generation right now. However, the fact that they got a structure this big working first time with most of the rooms that it's going to have is very, very impressive. There are obviously some things that are missing from this, like some real purpose for it, like in terms of like how you're going to get in, some real meaning for these keys, some real end state for it, because you currently just raid the whole thing right now and then go, oh, I guess I'm done. What they're going to do with this is something I'm excited to know about, but for now, yeah, I think that is all I can say besides a big speculation that I think they're going to tie the trial chambers into the rest of the game in a very fun way, and even if they don't, it's going to be a great way to get some extra ender pearls, and so I think it's a great survival feature. It is one that I've been most excited about for a very long time, and I'm very curious what extra rooms or challenges or bonuses they're going to be throwing our way, and indeed what will be happening with the prees and maybe its rod drop. But for now, all I can say is I'm very curious. I want to know your theories about all of these questions, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one, assuming that I make it back from where I am right now, because yeah, it's fun. As you see this, I've just either climbed 3 mountains or I've been rescued by a helicopter or something. Let's hope it's the first one. Okay, thank you for watching. Goodbye.